Okay, welcome to another talk. My name is Daryl Ledyard. I'm enjoying this wisdom app. I hope you are as well. Today, what we're going to do is do a 60-minute deep dive with a gentleman that I met here from just doing talks, and he jumped on with me. His name is Greg Sloan, and he is CEO of an organization called Go Beyond. We ended up meeting because of talking about life and being a father of four for me. And, he had some really great things that I took notice of. And after we kind of talk offline, which I really encourage folks to do, is to talk offline with different people and to network, uh, we decided that there was some synergies that we think that could lend to an hour and to deep dive into the idea of purpose. And the label of this topic, I called it the science of purpose with Greg Sloan. I'm not saying that there's a degree that you can get in purpose, but when it comes to the number of people that Greg has interviewed over the years, I think he has enough evidence and enough information to draw some conclusions about purpose in life. And we're going to get with him in a few moments here when he comes online to talk to him about the concept of purpose and the data behind it and why it's so critical and important in all aspects of your life. So I hope you enjoyed this interview, and welcome aboard, Greg. So grateful to have you today. How are you?
Daryl, having a great day. Really appreciate you setting this up. I think this is, obviously, I think this is an important topic, and I'm looking forward to just unpacking.
One of my favorite things when I was in high school in the psychology class was the Maslow hierarchy of needs. I always thought that, wow, I grew up with some lack of security and financial security. There was some, physical abuse that occurred in our house, mental abuse, things like that, where, I had to sort of like say, wow, I'm a survivor of all of this, but there's so much more that I wanted to achieve and to get to in my life. And in that very moment, in that psychology class, I knew that top of that pyramid was where I wanted to be. So I've lived my whole life in that direction just from just learning about that. So what I wanted to do is to take some time to talk about, some of the data points that you have, like, because we've talked a bit about how much data you've collected and how much information and research you've done on the idea of purpose and why it's so important for so many aspects of your life. So let's first get a little background about your story, and then we're going to dive into the topic a little bit. So Greg, tell me a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are right now.
Okay, so interesting. We didn't talk about your background in the financial, we're going to call it insecurity or instability, but that's definitely my story. So I grew up in Hawaii. My story begins in 1968, the year before I was born, because that was when my dad was diagnosed with mental illness. So I did grow up in a home, we're going to use the word dysfunctional, primarily because my dad's inability to be a normal dad, if you will, and even keep a job. So we were raised on something similar to welfare, but it was under the Veterans Administration. So for any of you who are familiar with that. But bottom line, grew up very poor. And I think that was a very critical foundation for how I thought about life. I did not learn about Maslow until later, and we'll talk about that later in the conversation, but I was definitely one similar to yourself, that my focus was on achieving the self-actualization, which was his original peak, and essentially being the most profitable person from a financial perspective that I could possibly be. So that was definitely the background. Moved to Georgia from Hawaii in 1988, did an undergraduate degree in finance, did a master's degree later on, but I spent 25 years in financial services. Most of that was as a personal CFO to C-suite executives and entrepreneurs. So that's basically the thumbnail of the background.
So when did you make the pivot to introduce purpose as your purpose?
Yeah.
So yeah, it sounds as though you've sort of almost built an entire business around purpose and identifying the areas in which you need to work on the framework, success framework. So to get to that point, and we'll get more into details about what you do, but how did you get to there? What was your story with that? Like, how did you go from you know uh, working spreadsheets to helping coaches to be better coaches?
So coming out of undergrad with a finance degree, and when I found finance as a major, I just thought I found my home. Just this numbers, spreadsheets, being able to calculate, use a financial. I loved it. I felt like I finally found home. And of course, this idea of the stock market and investing and gaining wealth through investment was just so intriguing and was so attractive to me. So that's why I went into the financial services industry. And for the first 12 years of my career, starting with Prudential as an agent and an advisor just selling products, and then spending the next 8 years as a personal CFO, it really, I didn't make that pivot until I reached what I thought was the pinnacle of success. And I was 37 years old. I was carrying a business card at the time that said Vice President of Goldman Sachs, because the company I was working for had been bought by Goldman 3.5 years earlier. And I was making more money than I ever thought possible growing up as a poor kid in Hawaii. And I was miserable. I was borderline obese. My marriage was on the rocks. I didn't have much of a relationship with my 3 children at the time. And I just said, there's got to be more to life than just making a lot of money. And so I actually used the term, I pivoted on purpose or to purpose, either way. And in December of '06, I went through a process. I was recommended several books by some friends and psychological exercises, if you will, and went through a process and wrote my life purpose statement in December of '06, and then I quit my job within 30 days at Goldman, launched my own boutique wealth management firm, and then in 2010 I started to incorporate purpose into my financial planning relationships. So for me personally, it was December of '06, and then I started to incorporate it into the business in 2010.
So I'm really curious about that. Like, how do you put, something like financial services and, purpose together? That really sounds interesting to me. I think I caught that before on one of our talks, but I'd love to know, like, what does that look like on the user side,
So
person, customer?
yes, so let's for those of us who are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and if you're not, you can just Google Maslow's hierarchy, and you'll see a triangle. And Maslow talked about the foundation of the triangle is sort of our physical needs and physiological needs. And so when you think about even financial services, back when I started in the industry in the '90s, it was all about helping people to achieve the minimum level of needs. In fact, the first tool I used was called a financial needs analysis. Now, the outcome was they needed to buy some life insurance and invest in some mutual funds, but nonetheless, it was about the basics of the needs. And then in the late '90s and even into the early 2000s, the industry started to pivot in a different term. They started to introduce another term called values. And so I went from needs-based to values-based. And if you can think about Maslow's hierarchy, we're sort of moving up the hierarchy. And in the early 2000s, and definitely through even today, the industry has evolved further into something called financial goals and dreams. And I think that those are even higher up the hierarchy, if you will, using Maslow's description. So when you think about goals, most individuals think of their advisor or financial service provider as helping them to set these goals, these financial goals,
Right.
invest money, make decisions. And so what I learned was that during my career, I would help clients to articulate, write down their goals, and then we would build models to achieve their goals, and then we would get there or pretty close to those goals, and then they would say, you know what, actually, as it turns out, that really wasn't as important to me as I thought. And I would get frustrated thinking, well, we spent all this time and energy. You said you wanted to own 2 houses in retirement. Now you're retiring 1 year early, 2 years early. And you just told me that, as it turns out, owning 2 houses is not as much of an important goal as you told me it was. So I would get frustrated with clients because I felt like we were working towards something that really wasn't what their core desires were. And so Stephen Covey, for those of you that remember the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he wrote a phrase in his book which said, if your ladder is not leaning against the right wall, every step will just get you to the wrong place faster. And he talked about success being this wall that we put our ladder against: financial success, career success, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying success is not important, because obviously that's something that I still strive for, but there's something even a little higher than success. And Maslow himself changed his mind later in his life. Most people don't know this, but in the 1960s, he said self-actualization is, in fact, not the peak of the pinnacle. There's actually something higher that's part of why we named the company Go Beyond. So you have to go beyond self-actualization to a higher level.
Yeah, I like that because I agree that there is, even something beyond that is, almost like a euphoria that is continuous, that is like a joy that is unstoppable because it's built properly. It's not just this transient joy that comes in and goes. So I really think that that's awesome that you're helping people. And as you were speaking about the way that you are, helping a customer, if you will, in the financial services industry, to not just make their dreams come true, whatever that might be, but to actually process what their dreams are to make sure that it's the right dream they're going after. That's like financial services 2.0, because that's a whole different level of support that you're offering. I think that that's really, really cool. And so how many clients did you work with in that capacity to help and plan that way? And did that become kind of data points in your decisions about what you're doing now?
Yes, it definitely became the data points. In terms of the number of clients, so when I launched, when I started to incorporate purpose, I would say this, in 2010, I was serving approximately 30 households. Recognize I was a personal CFO to C-suite executive. So my clients were 3 times the traditional advisor's average client size. My wealthiest client at one point in my career was a Fortune 200 CEO worth somewhere between $70 and $100 million. So when you have that level of client, you can't serve a lot of folks. They're very labor intensive and time intensive. But I would say, call it 30 clients when I made this pivot. And I will say not all of them bought into this new paradigm shift. I mean, they sort of did, but it was a process to help even my clients realize that they themselves desired something greater than personal success. They desired fulfillment. They desired significance. In another term, if you look at my bio, it says helping people move from the mindset of success to significance. And if we think about it, even on this app Wisdom, this is what we're doing, right? We're contributing to other individuals. You're contributing to me, I'm contributing to you, but we have not exchanged any dollars, right? There's been no swap of currency, yet we seem to receive compensation by helping our fellow man. And I think that this goes to the difference between happiness and fulfillment. You described, what did you say? Something like consistent joy? What was your...
Like a euphoria or consistent, everlasting joy.
Yeah. Okay. So I think of that as the difference between happiness and fulfillment. So happiness is sort of like the peaks of a mountain. You go up, you're happy, but then you go down to the valley and you're not so happy.
Correct. Yeah.
I'm a Braves fan, so yesterday I was happy, but if they lose tonight to the Astros, I'm going to be unhappy.
Right.
So actually, I just thought about this. This is a great analogy. So when you think about happiness, happiness tends to be, in my opinion, short-lived, followed by unhappiness. But if you think about fulfillment is more like the plane of a mountain range, the plains, as opposed to mountain peaks, where it may not be as high of a euphoric peak, but it is more of a everlasting or a continuous. So when I think of using the Braves as an analogy again, I'm really fulfilled. I'm really there's something about the fact that they've gotten back to the World Series, right? And when we think about our career, because purpose, we'll transition to this conversation, but purpose tends to be something that we associate with our career. According to the research, 70% of us, when we say the word purpose, we're usually referring to something having to do with our career. When you think about your career that is a continuous joy, the actual paycheck that you get becomes less important than this emotional high that you're on, because you're serving this unique group of people or this unique profile of individual that you feel uniquely designed to serve. In fact, statistically, the research says that this is from Gallup, I think in 2014, the average American is willing to make up to 23% less in a take-home pay if their job or career is fulfilling to them. So that tells you, not to say that we should pay people less. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that when you offer someone an environment of fulfillment in your company, in your business, then that's part of the compensation that they receive, and that's part of the compensation you receive for offering it to extending that to them.
Yeah. So in the work that you do you see more and more companies coming to this realization and bringing in a performance mentor like yourself, or those that you teach to enhance their employees? So even what kind of benefit do they have in that? Does it make them say, "Oh, I want to go get my own business and I'm out of here"? Why are companies thinking about that concept, I guess?
So I think it's still really early in the game. So I'm going to back up to 2009, which is the first paper that I came across that used the word purpose in a scientific trackable metric, if you will. And the paper was written by a gentleman named Todd Kashdan. He was a psychology professor at, I think, George Mason University. But he started studying and really doing research on purpose as a unique life, I almost want to say life hack. So companies, from my observation, I do a lot of research, and obviously we sell products in this space, are still trying to figure out exactly what this means. What do you mean purpose? My employees need to be purpose-centered. My employees need to be purpose-driven. What do you mean our company has to be? We have a mission statement. We have a group of we have a target client profile. What do you mean by purpose? There is a woman named Carol Cohn who I'm not sure, but it's within the last 5 to 7 years. She started a consulting company called On Purpose. And what she did was she went into organizations. Coca-Cola is one of the most famous, and she helped Coca-Cola write a purpose statement as an organization, which is different than a mission statement. But if you think about even the organizations that have popped up in the last 10 years, like Tom's Shoes and Patagonia and some of these other organizations that are very front and center about how they're here contributing to the greater good of man, as opposed to just generating profits, there's a high degree of interest in those companies. I can give you some statistics on that in a minute, but the point is that I still think we're really early in this. We'll say it's within the first 10 years. Maybe we're in the first inning of really understanding how to align mission, organization, and purpose, individual, so both parties or all stakeholders can prosper on purpose together.
It's very interesting because sometimes those things are not unified. The purpose of the business and the mission and all of that might not be aligned with everything that you stand for, but in some cases it would be, right? And I think that the generation coming up, and of course millennials, and I think Gen Z are really, really looking for a company or to be associated with a brand that stands for something that they stand for. So I think that there will be no choice but to sort of pivot, if you will, to a perfect purpose-centered mission that other people can sign on to. And I think that might be where things will go moving forward. But anyway,
Are you
yeah, go
familiar
ahead.
with Are you familiar with B corporations? B as in letter like boy.
No, actually.
Okay, so now we're getting into the politics of actually there is a new type of entity called a B Corp. And a B Corp is something that started off, it might have even started as a nonprofit idea, but it's actually now part of the political system. And I'm in Georgia. There is even legislative statutes where you can register as essentially, you might want to say it's kind of halfway between a for-profit and a not-for-profit. So a B corporation or at the state level, they use a different term. Name escapes me, but you can legally say to your investors, we are going to make decisions that are not always necessarily in the bottom line interest of the investor. So tradition, again, can't come from an investment background. The traditional legal structure, fiduciary responsibility of managers of an organization, and typically a publicly traded or even privately held company that has investors, you are required. You have a fiduciary responsibility to act in the best interest of your shareholders. That is traditional legal requirement under both state and federal statute. Now enter this new idea where the law says, wait a minute, if you set yourself up as a B corporation, we're going to allow you to act at times in the interest of another group of people other than your shareholders. This other group of people could be, I think Boomba Socks is a company that, they, for every sock you buy, they give a pair of socks to a homeless person or something like that. Mm-hmm. So there's this other group of people. We are legally allowing you to benefit, which to some extent, to a great extent, takes away from the shareholders' dividends or profits. But we believe society is going to be better off if there are more than just the shareholders benefiting.
Very interesting. I'm fully in support of that as long as it doesn't become some sort of a political entity. But that might be hard to control, or different ways that could get skewed, maybe. But I really do like the idea that you do things almost based on what the community wants, in the direction the community, your users want for your company to stand for. I think that that's a very sustainable way, and I believe that the shareholders can also have a play at the table as well. But I really like that idea of the B Corp. I'll definitely look into that some more. So we're talking science of purpose with Greg Sloan. If you're on this app and you're just joining the conversation, you'll get the full replay afterwards. If you're listening on the replay, his name is Greg Sloan. That's Greg Sloan. So give him a follow so you can get content when he comes on here. And we're talking about purpose, not just in the fluffy, self-help kind of way as you hear all the time. We're talking about the brass tacks of what purpose is and how it matters, like for real. Like, you know what I mean? This is like statistically backed up. This is like actual numbers and things like that. So we're talking to a guy that is, I think, very qualified to discuss these things. So one of the concepts, I looked at your company website where you talk about the journey of align, impact, and prosper. Now, I understand everybody wants to prosper. That's sort of the dessert, right? Everybody's waiting for. But the idea of alignment and impact, if you could clarify that a little bit for me, because I find it really interesting, the steps that you break this down for people.
So when we use the word align, the original alignment that I was referring to, and I still think that this is sort of a core piece of the value proposition, is what I call aligning mission and purpose, or missions plural. So what we've found in our research is that there were 5 missions in life that kept cropping up as what people described that were most important to them, and I'm going to describe them to you. It's family, number one. So each person has a family mission in the sense that they want their family members to thrive, whether you're married or it's your extended family. So family was number one. Friends was number 2, where they had this close-knit group of quality relationships that they wanted to make sure that they were investing in. Number 3 was career or company. Career if you're more of the employee type, company if you're more of the employer type, entrepreneurial type. The 4th was community, and then the last was cause. Cause meaning something that's more like a nonprofit. And so when we started talking to people, and I'm giving you some history about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe even a little longer, and when most of our discussions was in the area of career, but of course we spilled into those other areas. It's when you found the organization, the company, the company you wanted to start, a company you wanted to work with, and their mission was something that was coming back to the BCorp type of status, where there was something greater than just creating profits. There was something greater, that there was a greater benefit that society was going to be given. When you found that mission and you brought your individual purpose to that mission, now they were in alignment. And if you could get those two in alignment, that was a very large, very critical component of you as an individual, and even for the company, but you as an individual finding this place, getting to this place of fulfillment. Statistically, one of the statistics we found is that 96% of Americans believed that they could find this alignment of fulfillment in their workplace. So this is not just me pulling stuff saying, yeah, this kind of makes sense. This is backed by research from Gallup, from BetterUp. McKinsey's put a lot of time and effort into this in the last few years. So you really have this alignment. Now, the second part that we think about alignment is the relationships in your life. And if you think about those friends and family and even the community that you're involved in, if their values are not in alignment with yours, it's not going to be a fulfilling relationship. So alignment really is about sort of the career path or the workplace that you're involved in, as well as the relationships that you have and you're investing in your life. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like the more in alignment all of these are with each other, the more transparent and more freeing you are going to feel, and you're going to feel, I think, more alive. Because I mean, anytime you have these things out of alignment, that's got to cause yourself a lot of, like, what I call is task shifting, right? you're shifting from different roles in your day-to-day world where you're cutthroat lawyer during the day, and you try to be a tender
Hmm.
husband at night, and you try to be all of these kinds of things that different people you go to your friends with, and you're into sports, and then you try to be a different role here and there. So all of these different roles, like we all are complex beings, and we all have different roles that we play. But if
Hmm.
your purpose is the common thread between all of this, that's got to feel good, right? That's got to help you to get to those higher levels of Maslow's talking about.
Yeah, and then you can even the neuroscientists are now finding the chemical improvement or production when
Mm-hmm.
you are making decisions that are inside this narrower range of purpose, if you will. So I think of purpose sort of like a flight plan. I think, did we talk about this? Were you a pilot? Was that our
Yeah, I was a
conversation?
student pilot. Yeah, so I made plenty of flight plans with my flight instructor. Yeah.
Yeah, so purpose is more like a flight plan where you have this straight line between point A and point B, but the weather, the wind, and just I'm not a pilot, but I can imagine all of these things occur while you're in the air that cause you to deviate from the flight plan, but you never really go too much off, right? Maybe if you're 2 or 3% off, and then you pull it back to the center. That's sort of your purpose line. A friend of mine who's doing something similar in this space calls it centerline living, which is a synonym for what we're talking about. But coming back to the role that you mentioned in terms of all the other areas of life, this is where we use that term identity. So the first stage or the first phase, excuse me, of the process that I think anybody has to go through is, who am I? First,
Mm-hmm.
who am I? And then purpose is sort of, what is the best version of me? So to understand who you are today, which is sort of the combination of nature and nurture, but we all recognize that we carry these titles and or these descriptions. I've been involved in leadership groups that one that you had to introduce yourself without saying what you did for a living. And that was tough for a lot of people because they would walk in, they would go, so I can't say I'm a CPA. I can't say I can't. So then they just go to well, I'm a husband and a father. Okay, yeah, that's check. But like, what else about you is unique? Now you're digging a little deeper into, okay, you know what? I'm a teacher. At heart, I'm a teacher. I really love the light bulb
Moments.
moment that
Yeah.
goes off in somebody's head. Or I'm really a champion of people. And I bring that champion, that identity into, that's my wife's term, by the way, champion. So she really brings her championness to whatever she does. She's an encourager. She doesn't like negative talk. She's a health coach, by the way, in her vocation. See, even I still struggle with that. But the
So
point is,
no pessimism in Greg's house.
or if it, or well, Greg does bring the pessimism sometimes, and
Okay.
I
All
do get
right.
the wrath of Catherine. But yeah, coming back to these you use the term role. I actually like that term because I'm still a business guy, and I always think in terms of corporate roles. But at the end of the day, we're trying to dispel this and say, no, who are you? Like my son's girlfriend says, you do you. You just got it. You do you. So
Yeah.
anyway, so that's kind of the highlight of a line, and we can um, talk about the next one if you'd like.
Yeah. So like impact, I always believe that, there's ready, aim, fire.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think a lot of like that concept, sometimes it's better to spend so much time before you aim, because the thing is having yourself aligned and having yourself with a purpose, and you have a focus before you even start the aiming, is the way I think of it. So it's a little bit interesting thought here with impact. Why would you have impact before you've prospered? Like I could see where you could say, I prosper, and then I make an impact. right? So I want to know a little bit about this impact because it's really curious.
Yeah. So again, if you think about what we're saying if you do the right thing, the financial prospering is going to happen at the end. But if you focus on the financial prospering, you may not do the right thing. And when I say right thing, I'm not talking about right or wrong. I'm saying more like right thing for you, like your
Mm-hmm.
unique impact. It's not even just for myself. The people that are in the purpose community, and we'll use that as a very broad community. The people in the purpose community believe that we, as an individual, Daryl Ledyard, you are uniquely designed to impact a unique client avatar or unique person. There was a story. I'm gonna flip it to sort of the tree frog. There was a story of a man in South America a few years ago who risked his life to save this particular frog that was going to go extinct if he didn't come in and protect the forestry from being torn down. And he relocated some free trees and some frogs. But this is a man who believed that if he focused on this one animal, then he was going to have a greater impact. And I believe, the community believes, and science will even confirm this, is that we all are the compensation that we receive by impacting a certain group of people that we feel uniquely called to, it comes in the form of this physiological benefit. There are four chemicals called the dose chemicals or the happiness chemicals. There's this physiological benefit that we receive that causes us to say, wow, I'm fulfilled. I'll tell you a story of one of my clients who did buy into the purpose ideology, I guess, or process. And she was a retired attorney, and she wrote a life purpose statement. We kind of helped her put it together. And then she made a pretty significant real estate transaction. And we did a real estate tax transaction. And as a result of that, she was able to provide a greater benefit to two of her four children, her two daughters. And she was taking a trip to Europe, going to Paris, and she called me before she left. She and her husband would sometimes do this when they travel the world to make sure, God forbid something happens to us, make sure that the kids know to call you, and et cetera, et cetera. But she called me and she just said, Greg, I just want you to know, because we finally did this deal, and it was a multi-million-dollar real estate transaction. She said, I just want you to know how much more fulfilled I am. And if I go down in this plane across to Paris, I just want you to know, I'm as happy as I could ever be. I'm as fulfilled as I could ever be, and you helped me get there. And I tell you, that's phone call that she made. She didn't have to do it, of course, but she did it because that's really what she believed, and she really affirmed the process that I took them through to get her to this point, to get her and her husband to this point where that they were fulfilling these very unique things that these unique purposes that they believed they were called to. And the person that was most benefiting in this particular transaction was their two daughters.
So, Greg, as you say, you're talking about impact here, and you're talking about sort of the physiological benefits. So, let's say, for instance, you have to do this. As I'm thinking about this, and you align yourself, you get with a life coach, or you read some materials, you do these alignments, you set everything up, and then you go to a job that's empty for you, okay, and you are not making an impact, or you're stuck in a situation where you're trying to get financial security for your family, and the risk reward is you're afraid, right? You're just in a state of fear. What would you offer advice to someone that's in that situation? Because you have managed money for people and you understand the importance of this action, this step two. What would you recommend to somebody that's in this unimpactful situation, but they feel like they've done the first step, which is the alignment part?
Yeah, so I can give you my own story, and then I can give you a story of a person that I did coach through this. So I back in 2006, and even before, maybe, I did this little simple exercise with myself with respect to a career. And the exercise was just called Love, Hate, Tolerate. And I asked myself, what percentage of my time and energy do I love at the job? And then what percentage do I hate? So if I love 30% of the job and I hate 40% of the job and I tolerate 30%, the highest of those three is the hate. And it's time to move on. That means that was just a simple exercise for me to realize that I'm not making the impact because I hate more of the thing that I love. So there was a social worker that I was coaching using. I helped her articulate her purpose statement, and this is probably, I don't know, 4 years ago. And she gave me this feedback. She said, "Greg, I'm not making an impact." And her purpose that she articulated, it was very unique about a very specific type of female. And I want to say it was, females that had come out of domestic abuse or something like that. And she was a social worker, so she was around those types of individuals, right? The avatar, if you will. But because of the way the medical, she was in a hospital. Because of the way the hospital was structured, she really didn't have the time and energy, the time to have an impact with some of those women. And so I said, well, what if you're building a relationship with these women? What if you took them to coffee afterwards? Is that illegal? Can you do that without getting fired? And she's like, oh yeah, I could do that. So anyway, we talked her through this way that she could select a handful of women that she had already built a relationship with, and then on her own time, she would just take them out for a cup of coffee and then pour into them. Over and above what she was doing for her job. And that changed her mindset. So what I would say is, if you don't hate the thing, if you can pass the love, hate, tolerate test, but then bring your purpose into your current career, current job, current environment, and try that. Don't just automatically say, I'm not making an impact, therefore I'm going to quit. Think about, how can I make the impact under the confines of, under the limitations of the role that I have? And if you look at corporate America, I think it's Google, but some of those big companies now, they actually have, it's part-time, not part-time, paid time off that you can use. It's sort of like impact time off. You can, once a quarter or whatever it is, you can take a day and you can go, we'll pay you to make an impact. We'll pay you so you can find fulfillment.
Like a sabbatical. College professors take sabbaticals.
It is, but this is corporate America. And I'm looking at a slide right now that says companies must reimagine employee benefits. One of the things that can be a benefit is giving the freedom to the employees to do something, to color outside the line, so to speak, because it compensates them in this fulfillment area, and it brings that alignment. And if you do that, so I'm speaking to the employers and the leaders at this point, if you do that, and if you create that culture, statistically, 70% of your employees will find you to be a better leader, and statistically, you will have twice the retention that other leaders have that don't exercise these types of tools or methodologies, if you will.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. You come so prepared, Greg. I really appreciate you in so many ways. But certainly here as a guest, I really do appreciate how prepared you are for these questions. So one of my other questions here is, let's talk cosmic here for a second.
Okay.
So let's say we make a contract or an intention. I hope you're comfortable with this conversation, but we make an intention with the universe, God, whatever it might be, that we have this mission, this purpose. We lay it out there, right? We say, these are my strengths. This is my purpose, why I'm here. This is who I am. We line it all together. then what I'm thinking as you're talking here is by taking these steps that are in alignment, whatever that action might be, it's kind of like a down payment for that third step, prosper. That's my thought as you were talking. Is it's almost like you're by taking the steps, it's almost like you're working toward that down payment, and step by step, showing the universe that it's not just talk, it's not just a piece of paper. It's I'm doing this. Do you agree or?
So absolutely, I do believe in God, and I do believe that there is um, I believe he sees the sacrifice, he understands it. But I'll give you a real example with my daughter, and I have other examples, but this is one that just came to mind. So my daughter, when she was in college, um, really enjoyed taking electives that were in Asian studies. Okay, she loved learning. I'm half Japanese, so she's a quarter Japanese. So she loved learning about Asian culture. And when she was in, but she was a business major, where she took general business and some other. I don't remember what the exact major was, but just say it was a general business major. But she really hated it. But partly because of Dad's Um, uh, encouragement that business degrees are good degrees. Um, she found herself 2.5 years into her degree. Actually, it might have been even in her junior year. She just wasn't fulfilled, and she said, I really my purpose. And she wrote a life purpose statement, which really had to do about bringing cultures together. And she said, that's me. That's what I'm all about. And so, in her senior year, before she graduated, she's like, I have to switch my degree. I have to go in a different direction that was not a business. She had to get out of business school. Anyway, long story short, the academic advisor said, you know what? All those courses that you took, we're actually opening up a brand new major. You can take those business courses and move them to your electives. You can take your elective courses and move them into your major, and you can graduate early with a degree in Asian studies with a minor in business. Is sort of what it was. So she has this degree, and I'm still thinking, well, what are you going to do with an Asian studies degree, right? So she came and worked for me. She was in our practice as a business manager. But then when I sold my company, she didn't want to go with the new company that bought us. And she said, no, I'm going to pursue this thing that I really feel like I was designed to. And culture, bringing cultures together is about, it's kind of a human resource track. So she said, I might have to go back to college to get a graduate degree. And she looked into that. But then through a weird sort of circumstances, she got picked up for a temporary job, which ended up turning into a permanent job with a Japanese company here in Georgia. Like, how many Japanese companies are here in Georgia?
Right.
But she is now an HR generalist, and she's making more in that role on a salary basis than she probably could have made elsewhere, because she has this really specialized degree that I would have never thought would be worth much. But in that particular company, she's like the perfect candidate, because she is somebody who's interested in HR, and she has a degree in Asian studies, and this is a Japanese company doing business in North Georgia.
Customized.
It was exactly
customized.
So that was that down payment, and she got to see the benefit. And of course, as her parents, we're like, this is crazy. Like, you can't make this stuff up. And she's about to hit her 1 year anniversary with this company.
Stuff.
It's an amazing story.
This is awesome. So okay, let's transition to the part that everybody loves, is the prosper and how all of this stuff comes together. What does prospering look like when you've got all of this step 1 and step 2 taken care of?
Yeah. So, and look, I'm a finance guy. I still have a very strong desire and interest in maintaining wealth. And I do believe that from a psychological, physiological, as well as a personal preference, most of us want to be on the higher end of the financial spectrum. Now, there are some studies that say once you get to a certain point of financial security, the additional, $500,000 or $1 million doesn't move the needle that much. One of my wealthiest clients was worth, when I sold the company, was worth about $35 million. And I was like, another $1 million doesn't mean anything to you. There's no difference between being worth 37 million and worth 36 million. It doesn't move the needle. So there is a certain level that each of us can get to that will say, you know what, I'm really comfortable at this, and now I'm going to even be more on purpose, if you will.
Okay.
I'm going to be even. I'm going to have a greater filtering system to make sure that I say no more often than I say yes, because it has to really be aligned, and it really has to make the impact in order for it to have.
And you can afford to say no
when you can afford.
Yeah, I like that. That's good stuff.
Well, I mean, we can all afford to say no, right? Because most of us can afford to say no to even, going on the street and picking up trash for $2 an hour, right? Very few of us would ever say yes to that. So so there is this very low end of the spectrum. But the bottom line is, I do truly believe, and the research will back it up, that when you are a unique person, a unique solution to a unique problem, people will pay you more because you're a specialist. You are the perfect solution to their problem, and therefore you are worth more for that for that solution because you're the subject matter expert.
Yeah, I agree 100%. But you know what? The funny thing is that you were saying taking a job, picking up garbage on the side of the road. I volunteer to do that.
Exactly.
So, to me, that's in alignment with my purpose is to, make my neighborhood a little bit cleaner when I go for a walk or whatever. So, I think that, again, doing everything in purpose, and even I think volunteering is something that should be something that works as part of the package.
So go back to the 5 missions. The last 2 are community and cause, right? I volunteered for many, many years lining football fields and lining baseball fields because that was part of my contribution to my community. It wasn't a nonprofit. My son played baseball there. My son played football there. But it was part of this community. And when those boys ran out there and threw the ball around and messed up the white lines, the chalk lines, there was this sense of, that's my contribution to this practice. And so in the same way that we're, collect, what would he call, where you
pick up litter?
Yeah, you commit to a certain part of the highway. I can't remember what it's called, but
adopt a highway?
Adopt a highway, right. When you adopt a highway, that is part of your mission as being part of that community. It's part of your purpose. So I don't see that as being different. And again, you are compensated for that effort, whether you realize it or not. This is a simple question I ask people all the time. Have you ever volunteered for anything? And they go, of course I volunteered. Soup kitchen, whatever it is, Habitat for Humanity. I said, how'd you feel when you left? They said, I felt great. So nobody wrote you a check, but you were compensated. You tell me you felt great, but what was really going on? Your chemicals, your brain was producing probably oxytocin and serotonin, maybe some dopamine as well. It was producing these chemicals in your brain, and all you could verbalize was, I feel great. But really, you were receiving compensation from your body because your body said, hey, you did something that benefited your fellow man, and I'm going to give you some reward for that in the form of neurochemicals.
I love that. Compensation from your body. That's a great idea. I like the way you phrased that. So Greg Sloan is who I'm talking to today. Greg space Sloan. If you're listening on the replay, so far they don't have it so that you can see the guest information. Look him up and be sure to follow him. He has some great content here on the Wisdom app, and you come prepared, my friend. You've come prepared, and you're making us look good. So So why don't we just pivot just a second? If you can talk about your website address, which is, I believe it's trygobeyond.com, trygobeyond.com, and it's a great website. It has a lot of information about what you do professionally currently, and there's a wealth of information on there. So I encourage people to check that out. But going beyond that, how can people engage with you? And tell us a little bit about your product. Was it the friction? What was it called?
So friction EQ is
EQ.
one of
Yeah.
yeah. So that came out of it's EQ stands for emotional quotient or emotional intelligence. And what we found is that going back to that align, we use this tool in the align process. You want to align relationships, and one of the things we found was that, and we all know this, right? You just don't click with certain people, or if you do click, there's got to be a way to click better. Meaning you have to have a better understanding of who they are, their emotional intelligence, your emotional intelligence. So that is a product feature that we have that's in the Go Beyond platform. So Go Beyond is a platform as opposed to a product, and it has multiple products or features, if you will. We launched it in December of last year with life coaches and executive coaches, and that's still primarily our distribution channel today. We do have some financial advisors that are using it as well with their clients, but we believe in coaching. We believe in the relationship between a coach and a coachee, and so the platform, was built so coaches can use it to go deeper into relationship. And many coaches talk about purpose, but they really don't have a process to help clients articulate it, and definitely don't have something they can do it in 30 minutes, which is what ours does. So that's number one, and that's sort of the distribution model there. The website the content was licensed by a learning management system, and we are actually going to be rolling it out into traditional corporate America, from companies as small as 25 employees up to 100,000 employees. So that's coming in December. And that's going to be not through that particular website. It's going to be through an intranet website where the Home Depots and the Delta Airlines of the world would have an internal site. But nonetheless, it is a software platform where the individual, the user, if you will, I hate using the term, but software, that's what we have. So the individual user would go through the journey, the purpose journey, with another person, what we call a journey partner. So if you're using with a coach, obviously your coach is taking you through it. If you're in a company, you're doing with an employee, a peer. Obviously husbands and wives can go through that together. But right now it's primarily distributed through coaches and then through organizations shortly. We don't have a B2C model. It's a very, as as a SaaS guy yourself, a B2C is a completely different animal. We haven't figured that out yet. I'm not sure if we ever will, but that's where we are right now.
How are you enjoying this app so far?
I'm loving it. So, like many of us, I came from Clubhouse. I spent about 4 or 5 months on Clubhouse. I think I was late to the social audio game. Most of my career in social media has been through LinkedIn. I got into Twitter a little bit and just started Instagram last year, I guess. But the Wisdom app for me, because of the intimacy of just a one-on-one, and there's even a level of what's the word? Intrigue, not knowing how many people are actually listening, right? So we see this number that's above my head, that's 120 some odd, but we have no idea how many people are listening at the present time, and we have no idea how many people are going to be listening in the future. And so there's some intrigue about that for whatever reason works for me. I think other people are not. I know I've talked to other people that are not intrigued by that. They really want to know how many people are actually listening. I think that different tools work for different personality profiles, and it just works for me.
I'm going to ask you a personal side question.
Sure.
Doing all of this research and homework on building this app, and your core, all of your fundamental information, how has it changed you as a man and as a father?
Well, both as a husband and as a father, I'm better, but I'm still on the journey, right? I'm still not.
That's fair to admit. It's fair to
Yeah.
admit.
I struggle quite a bit with patience. And when I see something that, hey, here's the answer, then let's get on it. I do struggle with that, but it is helping me to recognize that it's helping me to be more purpose-centered, purpose-driven, and I'm on the journey like everybody else.
And you see the importance, right, of it. So that's certainly enlightening. I got to tell you, just talking on this app and sharing does make me a better father. Again, nobody wants to be a hypocrite. Nobody wants to be out of alignment with what they say and how they show up on an app like this. And so when I come home, I'm more cognizant of the fact that, wow, I just basically preached that this is my higher self and this is what I want to be on a day-to-day basis. So if I'm not being that higher self, I feel like I'm out of alignment. So it kind of works for me it's like my litmus test that I have to
It's great.
go to.
It's great. Well, Daryl, this has been wonderful. I actually didn't know if we were going to have an hour's worth of material, but you did such a good job of leading the witness, if you will. And I really appreciate it.
I really appreciate you. And folks, make sure you push the easy purple button under him. It just says follow. Follow him so when he does come up here, you can get more of his great knowledge and be in tune with what he has to offer. Because I really think as a purpose mentor and a storyteller and a researcher, you bring a lot to the table, Greg Sloan, and I really appreciate you.
Well, they can listen to me tonight. I'm interviewing founders. It's a series I'm starting. It's called Founders on Purpose, and I'm interviewing a gentleman tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, I'll be there to check it out.
All right.
Will. All right.
Awesome, Daryl.
Thank you so much. Greg Sloan, the website is trygobeyond.com. Do check it out. You can click on his profile while his face is still up here. If you want to keep your face up here so they can click on you to get to your Instagram, to reach out to you, that would be great. If you want to follow me, I always appreciate a follow. I always like to bring engaging guests on here. And sometimes it's just me talking to you and meeting people like this guy, Greg Sloan. I met him on here, and look at us. We brought us together for an hour together. So, again, Greg, thank you so much, and have a wonderful afternoon.
You too, Daryl. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's how it's done here on the Wisdom app. I do appreciate the folks that stood by and wanted to learn and grow. Maybe we'll take a few guests and see what people have to say about this interview. And hopefully they're not expecting me to be as smart as Greg, because I can't do that. But Jeff, how are you, my friend? Did you mean to come up here? And I don't hear you. Jeff Cunningham, going once, going twice. You're going to have to get your microphone situated, I guess. I didn't hear you, but I'll take another guest or two if you wanted to jump up here and talk about this, the science of purpose with Greg. He's going to be on at 6 o'clock tonight, so you can speak directly to him. But again, we really appreciate you listening in. And if you want to listen to other talks, I had a great talk last night with a rapper, a Def Jam rapper, and me. Imagine that, talking life with King Buchanan on here. He was signed by Jay-Z and L.A. Reid and Def Jam. And my goodness, the guy is just full of quotes, full of great life knowledge, and sometimes raw. We talked about it real. We kept it real and completely, dominated last night with that. I couldn't believe how many people joined us and, added us as friends and stuff. We even had a U.S. Senator